What do what do real estate agents have to be thankful for?
You?
No, lots. Oh, gosh. The last buyer Hunt worked with wasn't that bright. When Hunt handed him a buyer agreement that said sign here at the bottom instead of signing his name, he just wrote Capricorn. Hunt's first apartment only had 4-foot ceilings. He couldn't stand living there. And where will the 49ers get their uniforms for next Sunday's game? New Jersey. Humble apologies for that. I just had it in me. As each of us give our own thanks according to our personal persuasions, let us dwell on some thoughts that bind us together. You've blessed us with friends and laughter and fun, with rain that's as soft as the light from the sun. You've blessed us with stars to brighten each night. You've given us help to know wrong from right. You've given us so much. Please, Lord, give us too a heart that is always grateful to you. Amen. Please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, past President Charles. Actually, Chuck was the president the year before me, so he trained me in everything I did, so it's his fault. Yeah. As we begin our meeting today, I'd like to thank Browning Kuzno as our this month's sponsor and Rotarian Brent Kuzno. Thank you, Brent. We do have the month of February available for a sponsor, so if you're interested, please contact Jackie. Does anyone have any guests today? If so, please come to the floor, Mike, and introduce them.
Hello, fellow Rotarians. I'd like to welcome my guest today, Samantha Ayers. She is the Executive Director for Heritage Sylvania.
Good afternoon, past President Hunt. I have guest Rashad Humes with us. Rashad recently joined our team at Toledo tomorrow as partner manager. He is also here because he's a former 20 under 40 recipient, even though he doesn't qualify anymore, like me. But we're glad to have him on the team and glad to have him here at Rotary today.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It's my honor and privilege to introduce Cora and also Caitlin, 2 interns and 1 part-time employee that have been doing big things with Big Brothers and Big Sisters since they started on day 1.
All right, well, thank you all for attending. Jane Marie Ray, are you here? Please come to the floor, Mike, and you have a quick announcement about our winter donation drive. Is Jane here? All right, well, if not, I'd like to ask Gary Murphy to come forward with Leslie Vassar and her group for a presentation to the foundation.
Leslie will be doing the introductions, so. Come on up, come on up.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be back the 10th time to present a donation from the Jim Vassar Memorial Golf Tournament. So, as some of you know, Jim was a proud Rotarian for many years and really enjoyed his time serving on committees and getting to know all of you. It was very important to him. So we felt it was important to continue that and remember him in this way. So I'd like to introduce some of our committee. I'm going to start here This is my son, Sam Vassar, and my oldest son, Jacob Vassar. We have Steve Miller, Ken Finley, Pat Gorey, and of course, we cannot forget Murph because he's a linchpin. So I did want to just mention that we will be having an 11th annual golf outing, and mark your calendars for Saturday, September 7th at 14th? What? Is it the 14th? The 7th or the 14th at 10 a.m., I'll clarify. You know, just keep both those dates open. And we're also proud that we've been able to raise about $200,000 for our charities that we've been donating to over that time. Thanks. We definitely couldn't do it without your support. So we hope that that will continue. And the reason that we're here today is we did bring a big check, and we're here to donate this year. We're giving $6,000 to each of our charities, including Toledo Rotary, the American Brain Tumor Association, and ProMedica Foundation. So.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was awesome. David Waterman, will you please come to the podium and introduce today's speaker, Lori Hauser?
Thank you, Hunt. I'm very pleased to be here. With all the years that I've known Lori, I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to introduce her and pay her the respect that she has earned, certainly in her work at Imagination Station. So Lori arrived in Toledo in the year 2000, about 3 years after we opened the Science Center, under the name COSI. You might remember that. Well, COSI had a fairly tough run of it. And in 2007, after we failed in a couple of levy attempts, we actually closed our doors. I thought forever, frankly, but a number of the businesses around town were very helpful, providing financial and other support. And yes, Cordy Finkbeiner, who was then mayor, he went door to door working the political angles for us to get that levy passed. And since then, so that was 2007, so when we reemerged under a new brand called Imagination Station, Lori became our CEO, and she's been there ever since. And I had a front row seat to all of her work because I was on the board then and became board chair when she became CEO. So she has done so much, not just for Imagination Station, but I think for the community. In terms of the Science Center, as we call it, she's doubled our revenue from about $3 million when she took over to $6 million now. That's great. While running the center, she was also inspirational in adding our educational initiatives, where we provide STEM instruction to students, thousands of students in our community, on campus, in the classroom, and by remote learning. It's been very successful, and I think I saw Romulus here would agree that Imagination Station, through Lori, is part of the infrastructure of our youth educational system now. It's very important, STEM in particular. And while science centers like ours do need some levy support, they all do, with very few exceptions. It's important to note, I think, that when we finally passed that levy, we were expected to get $1.5 million in annual proceeds. Well, the Great Recession hit. That didn't happen. We got $1.1 million, roughly, and that's where we are today through multiple renewals. So during that period, we have reduced, through Lori's efforts, our public support from almost 40% to less than 20%. So I think that's good news for taxpayers. Nobody likes paying taxes. If their bills aren't going up, whereas our revenue has gone way up, our services to the community have gone way up, and we've kept our costs low. That's a tribute to Lori also for her business acumen. She's won countless honors along the way. Just to name a few, she was a National Medal Award winner as a community resource in 2007 and won an Innovation Nonprofit Award in 2010. I just can't say enough about her, but this is what I will say about her. This is a good example, I think. So recently we embarked on a strategic planning effort with an outside consultant. And when I was interviewed, after a few questions, the question was, what's the most important thing you can do in terms of a strategic plan for our Imagination Station? And I said, that's simple. Keep Lori Hauser. Keep her here, keep her motivated, keep her leading the center, because she's not just a good leader day to day, for all the reasons I've said. She is a strategic thinker constantly, looking down the road, checking with science centers across the country, what's happening. Most recently, we developed the theater there, really state-of-the-art, high-def theater, which you really should. If you haven't seen it, you should go experience that, because it's dramatic. So I can't say enough about Lori and what she's done, not only for Imagination Station, but for Northwest Ohio and our community. So thank you. Here's Lori.
In full disclosure, I didn't send most of those things over. I sent him some of my favorite things, and I said, just lead with that, something short and sweet. But thank you so much. I have been very blessed with having him at my side, and all of our board. I'd like to recognize a few of them that are also here today. Dr. Laura McGath is here with Lords. Dan Dower, I saw him walk in through KeyBank. Dr. Durant is here today as well. And there are two also, I still consider them part of the family, even though they might not be active board members, Brent Kuzno and John Jones. So thank you for all of them to help, because it takes a village to get to those awards that David was mentioning are a team effort. There's not an individual with that. So that goes from the board to the team that we have here today to everyone in doing that. So thank you so much for all of your support, guys, in being here. And David mentioned, I was 15 when I joined, so when it was back in that time period, since he did use years. But Toledo's been lucky to have a science center in the community for 26 years, has been operating here. And we have we're pleased to be downtown. It's a pleasure to serve this community, and it's very exciting right now to see us growing and how it's developing. And you know, David mentioned a few of the nice recognitions that have happened, and you may see us in so many different lights on how you're actually utilizing the Science Center. We did just complete the $12 million renovation, nice awards, but you also might know us because your kids visited a school visit and told you all about it at dinner. We recently dropped 24,000 bouncy balls from the ceiling. You hear all kinds of things, but the Science Center's number one mission is really to spark an interest in the sciences in our community. And we have an event coming up that is perfect for all of us to actually enjoy together and experience it. So we are going to talk a little bit about this once-in-a-lifetime experience of the solar eclipse that's coming. And they told me this slides will work easy peasy. So the eclipse is happening on April 8th of this year, 70 days away for all of us to kind of get ready. Some people have been working on it for 2 years. My team, we've been all talking about it. I had somebody put in a time off request 5 years ago for this date coming up. They were a planner. It was denied in doing that. So a couple things to think about to give you a little bit of history before we get into it. And Carl Nelson's going to give you a little bit of the science behind it and what kind of to expect. But In 2017, Toledo participated in, we had about 68%, 70% totality of the eclipse that took place. We had over 3,000 people sitting in Festival Park watching that September afternoon. And that wasn't 100% totality. And when we heard about communities that had the 100%, like in South Carolina, for instance, they reported $269 million worth of travel and tourism bump up from the eclipse being there in 2017. You also hear of like some numbers that 88% of the population that was in the pathway was viewing the eclipse, and over 20 million people just drove to get into the path of totality. And these were words that were not in my vocabulary 2 years ago that are coming up. But I think that this is an amazing opportunity in a few different ways. And we think of it as like, what do I need to know, think, feel, and do when we're talking about the eclipse? Because this is an event that's going to happen once in our lifetime here in Toledo. It's something that we can all experience together at the same time, and it will have an economic impact on our community. When was the last time that something like this happened? What is that? 1806 in Toledo. They happen all different places around the world, but we're just talking of what's happening in this community. And to give you an idea that, and I don't want to steal Carl's thunder, but Sylvania will not have 100% totality. Toledo will. It changes for the University of Toledo in what will be 100% totality. So we are like one of the last on the west coast of the path of 100% totality. And Carl will share a little bit more with that as we kind of go through. But we are really hopeful to see people driving into our area from Detroit, Ann Arbor, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis that will come here and stay. There's a 3-day weekend. Visit us, experience us, and have that moment all together. But you can also have it in your backyard if you're living here with your family and taking advantage of that. The one thing I do want to say is that it's not just the Science Center. I mean, we are planning a watch party April 8th. You can be down with us. But so are so many others. There's no way one organization or one hotel or one attraction could possibly do this. It is really about a collaboration. We've been meeting with a few of the other area businesses in trying to get the word out, as well as there's another presentation tomorrow with the Destination Toledo and the emergency for the state of Ohio emergency planning efforts. So I think that it's important for us to get the word out, but we're collaborating with the symphony, the library, Keep Lucas County Beautiful, the schools. Collaborate and take advantage of this because it's going to happen to each and every one of you if you want to take advantage of this moment and remember with your family what actually took place. Because let me show you just 2 things, really. My team put this slide in. I'm not really sure who that is. Carl has a name for him, but I'm not going to say it out loud. Yeah, Spider-Man. Okay. So, one more. Hit it again. There we go.
Damn. Oh,
This is so crazy.
look at how dark it is out here.
Look at the skyline. It looks like nighttime.
It was amazing. Like, you stop.
When that diamond ring came out,
It kind of felt like love.
I heard little crickets come out chirping and all that because it got dark. And I don't don't know. And I felt the temperature drop.
Celestial things are just beyond comprehension. And when you see one and it's really there, and we're all here,
No matter who you were,
everybody
what your
different.
beliefs were, what your morals were.
joy
It sort of lets you see where we sit in the cosmos.
You know, because we all are experiencing life the same way. So
what color, what political, anything. Everybody's like,
I think it's something we all really need right now. It's just to feel connected in a way.
There was such a camaraderie and friendliness, and we were literally touching and hugging each other.
I bet the whole world was looking up. I bet the whole world was looking up.
That's one of the things we just wanted to stress. I know a lot of our conversations will go on the economic impact. It will go on logistical of what actually happens, but don't miss this moment that also takes place, because you don't have to have so many other things going on. You just need to step outside. If it is with your family, friends, colleagues, you're going to go somewhere and you can all experience this together, because it's not going to happen here in Toledo again for another 100 years. So I'm going to hand it off to Carl Nelson. He is our chief scientist, and he can give you a little bit. We'll take you through what to experience, and then I'll come back up and we'll chat a little bit more. Carl?
Okay, so that video, like every time I watch it, I like get emotional. Right? It just gets you. And it kind of speaks to how emotional viewing a total solar eclipse can be. However, throughout human history, that joyful experience is not what most people experienced. What they experienced was a sense of dread, a sense of doom, a sense of the end of days, right? Because you take the sun away, that's what gives life to this planet. That allows us to grow plants. It allows us to have warmth, light. You take that away suddenly, and it's like, that's a dread moment. I don't know how else to say it, right? In 585 BC, the Leads and the Midians in what's now central Turkey were fighting a 6-year war. An eclipse occurred, and they both decided, that's an omen, we need to stop. And they stopped the war. So it's a life-changing sort of event. And 4,000 years ago, the Sumerians, by sheer force of collecting data, were able to figure out that eclipses, both lunar and solar, come in cycles. So they were able to predict when an eclipse might occur. They didn't necessarily understand the celestial mechanics of how it happened, but people did make up stories like we do, stories of demons taking a bite out of the sun, right? Of giant dragons swallowing the sun whole. And back then they didn't realize that the sun would come back, right? They hadn't had that experience. Typically, at any one given point on the planet, an eclipse will happen maybe every 350, 375 years, something like that. So they made up stories, and of course you make up stories of what causes the eclipse, you have to come up with some solutions. So if there are demons eating the sun, you scare the demons away by screaming and yelling and beating pots and pans. And if there's a dragon that's devoured the sun, you shoot flaming arrows at the sun to reignite it. Later, you shoot cannons, you shoot guns, rifles. And it's easy to look back on those people and go, how silly. Like, what didn't they get? Right? They're so naive. But in 100% of those cases, it always worked. The sun came back. Right? So don't get down on them too hard, because it always works, right? So with that, let's kind of like talk about the science of, do I have to do the flicky thing? Okay. Eclipse science. So if you look at this map, the really cool thing that I like to notice is in the bottom right-hand corner, all of North America will experience a partial total eclipse in April. But that dark band is the one that we focus the most on. That is the path of totality, where the sun will be completely blocked out. And as Lori had alluded to, we are really close to the path of totality. Here in Toledo, we'll have, 1 minute, 58 seconds, about 2 minutes, right? If you go a little bit further south to Findlay, you're up to like 4 minutes of totality. And more specifically, as she said, Sylvania is not in the path of totality. It's like a path that goes from the House of Meats to Aldi. Everything below that, you're going to get some kind of totality. So our friends and neighbors in Sylvania will have to come to Toledo to actually experience totality. So I thought it's interesting to take a moment just to talk about scale. When you talk about the universe and all these things that are happening, like what does it actually look like? So here we have the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, obviously not to scale. But if we were to enlarge the Sun so that it's about 109 times larger in diameter than the Earth, it's about that big. And then if we were to scale the Earth and Moon, the Moon is about 30 Earth diameters away from the Earth, and now scale the Earth and Moon relative to the Sun, it's amazing, like the whole scale there, like to put everything in sort of perspective, especially when we start looking at diagrams of how eclipses happen. So when you talk about eclipses, there are 3 major kinds. There's the partial eclipse that we all experienced back in 2017 and that all of North America will experience in April. There is a total eclipse on the far right where the moon completely blocks out the sun. And then there's something called an annular eclipse, which happened back in October of last year on the West Coast, where the moon is a little bit further away in its orbit from the Earth and it can't completely block out the sun, so you get what looks like a ring of fire around the sun. So three major kinds. And then if we just quickly look at, again, not to scale, but for a total solar eclipse, or for a solar eclipse in general, the moon casts a shadow on the Earth. And the reason I'm talking about this in particular is to contrast it with like a lunar eclipse. I'll come back to that other one. A lunar eclipse, the Earth casts a shadow on the moon. During the solar eclipse, only a tiny portion of the planet gets to experience that path of totality, whereas with a lunar eclipse, half the planet gets to see the moon being blocked by the Earth's shadow, just because of the scale, the size of the shadow. So let's talk about how the moon actually orbits the sun, and you're going to say, I know how the moon orbits the Earth. I'm sorry, how the moon orbits the Earth, right? And so, again, not to scale, which is why I like that diagram earlier to sort of really put it in perspective. But the moon orbits the Earth as the Earth orbits the sun. And my 4th grade son would then ask me, well, then why don't we have an eclipse every month? It seems reasonable, right? Because it should cast a shadow somewhere. Well, it turns out we don't, because the moon's orbit around the Earth is tilted a little bit. So we go kind of from a top view here of the moon orbiting the Earth, and then we're kind of turn sideways to see what happens. The orbit of the moon is tilted about 5 degrees relative to the orbit of the Earth around the sun. So sometimes it's just too high to cast a shadow, and then at other times it's simply too low to cast a shadow. And when it's just right, when it's in that Goldilocks area, right, it will cast a shadow, and then we will have an eclipse. So another way to look at it more detailed is, it's a very complicated diagram, but the big takeaway is there's two times when we hit like eclipse season when we can have a variety of eclipses, lunar, solar, like that, which, let's do this. Let's pause for a moment. So we're talking about having eclipses. Let's think about the moon for a moment, though. I want you all to imagine right now that you are outside, middle of a field, full moon overhead, and I want you all to, right now, do this. Stick your hands out. You're going to pluck the moon from the sky between your thumb and forefinger. How big is the moon? Okay, and hold it up so I can kind of get it. Okay, Okay, so what I think a lot of you might be thinking of is this, right? When the moon is low on the horizon, it, for some reason, some perceptual reason in our brain, it appears to be big. It's not. It's always the same size. And in fact, when you're doing that activity, the size of the moon is the size of a green pea. I was looking in the salads to see if I could find a green pea, but no green peas. It's the size of a green pea. It's really small. Okay? And this, I was talking with Dr. McGath about this. This is a really interesting thing. Like some people will say, oh, the moon looks giant because you're seeing it in perspective of like buildings or a barn on the distance, and so somehow it looks bigger. But astronauts observe this effect in space, on the space station. When they see the moon rising above the Earth, it appears bigger when it's on the horizon. So what's happening in our brain with this illusion is not really well understood. I just think that's kind of fascinating, that there's a lot of stuff we still don't really understand. But going back to eclipses, I think a lot of times in our language it creeps in that eclipses are this rare event. They're not really that rare in some sense. Every year there are a couple eclipses. There could be up to 5 eclipses that occur in any given year. And that's a mix between the annular and the partial and the total. Another interesting thing to notice, the clever among you will notice that there is a lunar eclipse in the month preceding or before or after a solar eclipse. Just kind of an interesting aside there. And we will have one happening with this eclipse, but it's a very tiny lunar eclipse, and it's only, I think only in Asia is it available. So we won't see that here. But eclipses are not rare. What you're thinking of is an eclipse happening at a given location, like in Toledo, at like how often does that happen? And as Lori pointed out, the next one won't be for another 100 years. And before that, it was 1806. Toledo wasn't even a city back then, right? And if you remember the eclipse back in 2017, look in the upper right-hand corner there, number 22. That was the eclipse path for that eclipse. And then, maybe I shouldn't get into it, but eclipses come in cycles. Every 18 years, 11 days, 8 hours, the Earth, Moon, Sun all get back into the same location. So in September of 2035, that's the next eclipse that partners up with the one we had in 2017. And then you see how they shift westward by about 1/3 of the globe? That's at 8 hours, and it shifts westward. Eventually they fall off the planet. In this case, this cycle will fall off the planet. So eclipses are not that rare, is my point. They happen all the time. But you notice a lot of them might happen over the ocean. Unless you're in a boat, you're not going to see it. So, on eclipse day, what should you be thinking about? What should you be preparing for? Mostly being safe, right? Whenever you look at the sun, you need some sort of protection. On your table, there are the solar glasses right there. During the partial phase of the eclipse, that is your protection. During totality, you can take those off, but the moon is now your protection. You always need protection when you look at the sun. You just need to repeat that. You always need it, okay? So, this diagram kind of leads up to that. You need a filter, and then you don't, and then you need a filter. And of course, taking the glasses off is the cool thing to do during the total eclipse. So to be safe, you can wear the solar glasses, which you all have a pair of now, and those are totally great to use. If you have some from the 2017 one, they're not scratched up, they don't have holes in them, you hold them up to a bright light, you can see nothing, those are totally fine as well. You can make indirect viewers, and we did this during the last eclipse. We made pinhole viewers. You poke a hole in the top of the tube, it images a tiny spot down inside that cardboard box, and you can view the partial eclipse indirectly, safely. I love this illustration or this photo, right? We're protecting the kids. They got their pinhole viewers, and it must be like cloudy, right? So the sun is not out, so he's trying to figure out what's going on. But at first glance, it's like, what's he doing, right? Don't do this. Don't do this. Have protection, viewers, indirect, direct. You can do this a lot of different ways. You don't have to have fancy equipment. The internet loves the colander viewer. It's everywhere. You take a colander outside, it's got little holes in it. It will image the partial phase of the solar eclipse. On the right-hand side there, those are holes between leaves on a tree forming those patterns on the wall of the solar eclipse. You can put your hands together like this and make little holes and image the eclipse with your hands. So there's lots of ways to do it. We'll have some fancy things like this that allow a lot of people to gather around at the Science Center to see the partial phase as it's happening. We'll have telescopes and things like that. But once totality hits, what should you be doing or thinking about? And a couple things will happen. Because the shadow is passing over us, the temperature could drop 5 to 10 degrees. Animals could be confused. Bats could come flying out. Cicadas might start chirping during the partial phase, then stop during totality. So look and listen and be aware of what's happening. The sun is going to go from this giant softbox to a point source, and the shadows are going to look weird. They're going to look sharp. Normally, shadows from the sun cast by trees and leaves look soft and fuzzy. As it gets covered up more and more by the moon, it's going to look very sharp. Some things to keep in mind. You often hear about the diamond ring effect. As the moon begins to completely cover the sun, there'll be a tiny sliver of the sun. It looks like a diamond ring. That's where it gets its name from. You'll have your safe glasses on to view this, right? And then finally, I find this really cool, that the moon is not a smooth marble. It's lumpy, it's got craters, and so just after the diamond ring, there'll be the last few lights of the sun sneaking through the craters on the side of the moon that will create little flashes of light called Bailey's beads. And then once the sun is completely covered, you can take your glasses off, you'll be able to view the corona, the outer surface of the sun that you can never see because the sun is simply too bright. And a double exciting thing, we're approaching the peak of the solar cycle, 22-year cycle. There could be a possibility that we could see some solar mass ejection, some big things coming off the side. If I was going to say if the stars align, but if the stars align, you know, that we could see that happen. So it could be a really spectacular thing. But not to be doom and gloom, everybody always asks the question, what about the weather? If it's cloudy, the eclipse is still going to happen. If it's totally overcast, that's going to be a real downer because it'll get darker, but you're not going to see a whole lot of things happening. But it's going to happen no matter what. And here in Toledo, if you look at historical weather data, we have about, what is that, like a 32% chance of clear skies. Cleveland has about 40% just because of lake effects with the lake, and it kind of gives them a clearer chance. But to be positive, 38% chance, that's good. Temperature and precipitation, if you look at historical data, you don't even need to look at that. It could be anywhere, right? It could be hot, it could be cold, there could be rain, there could be snow. It is what it is. And one last thing, from the science aspect of things, the eclipse that occurred in 1919 was a really special one, I think, for science in general, in terms of Einstein had proposed his theory of general relativity a few years before, right? The idea that massive objects like the sun can actually warp space and time. And that's not something you can test in a laboratory, right? That's just, at least back then, it's difficult to do. But the suggestion was, or the idea here, is that if you take a photograph of a portion of the sky, a night sky, of the stars, and then you take another photograph of that same area when the sun is having an eclipse in that space, the light from the star gets distorted by the mass of the sun, warping space and time, and the images will look like they're in the wrong spot. And so hopefully this works here. This is a nice little, So we have the sun, and then the earth, and then we have the star, but the starlight from it is being bent by the warping of gravity by the moon, by the sun. And so the apparent location of the star looks like it's over here. So the end result is you compare the two photos, and some of the stars look like they are in the wrong location. And so they did this during the eclipse of 2019, verifying his theory of general relativity. And of course, you don't do it once, you do it again. So the next eclipse that came along, they did the same thing. It got the same results. And so, just kind of an interesting, fun fact about science and what happens during eclipses. One last thing to build off that video that we watched. When it is time for the eclipse and you are outside, put this thing down and experience the eclipse. Or do this and take a photo of your family and what they're experiencing. There are going to be a gazillion photos, far better than anything you can capture on this phone, that you can download for free, and all sorts of stuff. Put it down and be in the moment. It's only 2 minutes here in Toledo. You'll survive, right? But capture your family. That's going to be the thing that you're going to treasure. And with that, I'll give it back to Lori.
He always has the videos and everything, and I don't have a video like he does. So one thing I want to stress too, when he's like saying 38% of clear skies, a year ago when we announced that this is coming and to save the date, I was able to stand outside without a jacket on, and it was sunny, it was beautiful. It's perfect. And hopefully we will be that lucky again. 5 days later it was snowing. So, but it's still on the 8th. Let's hold for that. And I think that's one of the roles that we play too, is that it's all the pregame now. What's happening over the next 70 days of education, awareness. And if it's going to happen any way, shape, or form, then let's fill up our hotel rooms. Let's have people come in and take advantage of our community. Let's have them experience those things that are here and enjoy that as well, because it's still going to happen. One thing that, and we've been talking about it a lot, to give you an idea, he mentioned the Eclipse, that band. He was lucky enough, we sent him out to the West Coast, and hearing his stories of getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and running all around to capture that experience. And I think it's very good advice to sometimes put the phone down when you are experiencing that, because you just don't want to miss it. In the lines of rushing it and just having that human interaction with everyone. And I think that we're going out and speaking to different organizations. If you want something for your own team or your own staff or doing that, we would be happy to, because I think that I've done several of these, and we tend to focus in on the exciting parts of it. I know there's still logistical efforts and things like that always come out. One thing I would say too is, like we would talk to the city, make sure your lights don't come on in your house that are like activated automatically, and then all of a sudden you're lighting up your neighborhood, and you want it to be dark, you want to have that minute. So there's lots of little things, but just don't miss it. One thing too I'd like to stress, and I got a little bit of a number, and I don't want to steal all of Lance's thunder for some of this, but I was shared on Friday. I was talking with Mark from the CVB and sharing that week, like of April 6th, 7th, 8th, we've seen like over a 400% increase in hotel rooms from where we were a year ago. They're coming, and hopefully we'll even see that even go further and further, like people making those decisions now of where to spend their time. Many schools are closing. We don't want school buses out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon while this is all taking place. Think about it with your team, your family, of where you will be. When I say that we're working with it on that pregame, let me jump in here. We have been generously supported by Synovus for some of our science kits. We have 800 kits going out to schools. All of Lucas County, 3rd grade, Findlay schools will get them. There's several going to Dublin, as well as a lot of our community partnerships. And they are kits for the schools, for teachers to utilize in the classroom about all the pre-awareness of what to do when you're at home. We've got glasses, obviously. And then we did this thing, and I think we're just shooting way too small in the very beginning. We wanted to do the Solar Ambassador program. And we were at a conference and we heard about it, and it's getting people we will train to go out and put on their own eclipse parties or talk about it, what's taking place, because we don't have the staff size to do that. And we were hopeful to get like 30 people that were willing to volunteer in doing that. We have over 100 people that signed up to be the Solar Eclipse Ambassador. Cindy's got 2 at Sunshine, or she was referring to it as Unsunshine on April 8th, that they will be hosting their own eclipse party. We have a bartender at Catawba Island that is hosting a party. We have a gentleman who called, and I don't need to give the city of where he's from, but he was like, where do I get the information? How do I find out about what's going on? Because I'm looking forward to it. And our team member said, we'll email you everything, when the meeting is. And he goes, I got to go get one of those emails. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be bumpy. But yay, he's getting out there and trying to figure it out and wanting to be a part of it, because it is really something that we stress. It's for everyone, no matter what your age is, no matter where you are. You can just step outside and experience this. So please take advantage of it. The kits will be mailing out soon. We also will have some kits in the Science Center. We have kits that we're handing out for free that will have like how to build your own solar viewer that Carl was mentioning. The glasses too, I would stress, like everybody was like, oh, I need to get glasses. You can share glasses with your family too. If you have 2 and you have a family of 4, you can share them. Just don't look directly at the sun at the exact same time if you don't have 4 in doing that. So please think of things like that when they're coming out. And what's next for us is that The next 70 days, you're going to see a wide range of events and experiences, even pre-solar eclipse. So we're installing a new exhibit, Above and Beyond. It opens Friday, and it deals with flight and space. You'll see films that are coming out, some documentaries. We have an astronaut coming, Don Thomas, who is from Cleveland, who also was in the All-Ohio shuttle launch that took place, so he will be here. We have a Girl Power event coming up in March, and the keynote speaker is from Boeing and is an aerospace engineer and looking at. So you'll see lots of different things taking place to just make sure everybody's hearing about what's in our community and being aware of it. The last I would leave you is that if you're interested, please come. We will have a viewing party. We will also be tagging along with several of the media outlets and hosting them, along with our 100 ambassadors that will be having parties out in the community. So please let us know how we can help you, even in just educating if you're doing something on your own. If you have a Rotary meeting on that date, what's all taking place, some things to think about with that, because I know if you have that moment to maybe pause some work even, pause it for that second. Something that you could reschedule and do the next day, don't push through it. Take advantage of that moment and really experience it. Why push it if you don't have to? And so that would be one of the last things. And I'd say also, I see all adults in this room, so it's easier. We're partnering with the 419 Ale Trail, and you'll see solar eclipse beers popping up from all of them as a challenge from Lucas, Wood, and Hancock County, since we are all in that pathway. And then we're going to have a beer tasting event for all of these solar eclipse beers that weekend. So it's really going to be fun for all ages to do that. And not to think that we're excluding, we're doing it with some wineries too, so whichever you care to have. Thank you so much for your time. Carl and I are here if you have any questions. We'd love to have dialogue with you guys if there's anything we can do. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you so much.
My wife and I have been thinking for a while of traveling just because of the likelihood of cloudy weather in this area. Do you happen to know along the path of totality, are other communities expecting this kind of influx of travelers? Do you have any idea what the roads might be like that day? I haven't seen any national information about this anywhere yet.
I'll start for a little bit of what I've heard, and then I'll let him share some of his experience. I know that we've been in talks with folks in Hancock County. As Carl mentioned, they would have like 4 minutes of the totality. They are planning for that. I mean, I think that their city is not used to seeing an increase in population like maybe we are for hosting events like the thousands we have come in for the 4th of July, or even how we did Solheim. So I think they are aware very much of the possible increase. I think NASA had said your county size could go 2 times, 2-3 times, depending on where you are of your population. I think that we've also heard stories of people just stopping on the side of the road, and being able to kind of take advantage of that and look at that. So I know that some cities are very preparing. Our city is doing the same in the lines of like safety procedures. But I think the further you go south, the warmer it gets, the crowded it will become in that regard. We had a team member that went to Nashville, outside of Nashville in 2017, and we were hearing just stories of like, if it took 8 hours to get in, it took 20 hours to get out, to drive and being back. And they were in somewhere where it was a very warm community, but then that population. So there will be increase of traffic. I know that some hotels are already full in this area. So depending on how far you want to travel, like an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour radius.
Yeah, in terms of like, where's the best place to go? We're going to be here in Toledo. So I haven't researched other places. There are some resources online like greatamericaneclipse.com that has some detailed guides that includes typical weather patterns and ability to travel from one distance to another. A lot of eclipse chasers will pick a location with the thought that they will be on the road moving if the weather turns bad. So I guess I don't have a great answer in terms of that, but there are some resources online that could help you find like a better spot. I think the one eclipse chaser that we had talked with was heading to Texas. So, that Texas area, maybe, San Antonio, maybe an area if you're looking to travel. But as you said, hotels are probably booked as well. So it's a difficult thing.
I do think the further you get south, where it's like sunnier, warmer, easier, they'll have it longer, they are seeing that increase already, and it's harder to get in and have a hotel stay. Our team member was camped out in somebody's backyard, I believe is how he ended up doing that. So I think it's all relative to what you would like to see, how much of an enthusiast you are as well. I think the thing that will happen to our community too is that people will start hearing about it on, end of March and be like, oh, is that happening here? I didn't know that that was happening here. Where should we go? And you might see people even just driving into the community. So I think that could also take place.
Hi.
Hi.
Wait, I'll just do this.
There you
Hi.
go.
I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'd love to come down for the viewing with my children, but I got to keep them entertained. So how long, when should people start coming down to the party and whatnot on that day? Because I guess that could get pretty busy and crazy downtown. And then I have one small little question after that.
Okay. We'll be open at 10. We open early that morning. Normally, we're closed on Mondays, but we'll be open that day, and the full Science Center's open, everything like that. And the park will be activated outside, and there's no charge or anything to be outside in the park with all of those festivities. But I would want Carl to mention, when it actually, the eclipse, we talk about that 1 minute of totality, but there is some pre-things. Do you want to explain, to get to that point, it will start to change outside?
Yeah, so in the park, we're going to be building solar viewers. So if you don't have one, you can build one there for free. We'll have other activities. We'll have our blender bike. We'll be making eclipse smoothies. We'll be launching paper rockets that you can, so lots of fun stuff to do. And as Lori said, the focus on totality, that's just 2 minutes, but there are hours beforehand where you can actually watch the progress of the moon across the sun. And we'll have, like I say, those larger viewers set up so that if you don't want to build your own viewer, you can, sort of gather around that. We'll have telescopes set up with a feed so you can actually see what's happening, and then all sorts of activities and things. So there should be plenty to do for the hours leading up to it, and for the, then the reverse happens, right? A couple hours afterwards, you're going to see the same sort of partial eclipse as well.
And there'll be plenty of beer for me to drink while I'm there too. Well, with my
Yes.
4-year-old and my
Young
2-year-old.
children. You have
Okay,
young
that's
children,
really good.
yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
Just a really other thing. We went to a safety day. I live in Wood County, and they were saying, go to the grocery store, get everything packed. You need to make sure that this apocalypse is happening. I mean, I don't really freak out about that kind of stuff, but should I be really going to the grocery store and making sure everything I need everything in my house to,
The one thing you
in
just
case?
need is renew your membership to the Science Center.
You got it.
That's the only one that we're worried about, but no. I think that it will be crowded. But I don't think it's gosh, you won't be able to get bread and milk. But I have encouraged folks especially in the hospitality areas, to get your deliveries in early. Could be, traffic could be hard getting around. So if you can get your pre-deliveries in, then do that, especially if you're going to see a large increase in users or food service or whatever your entity might be. But I think, if you get your membership to the Science Center, you should be good to go. Then, okay. Do you have anything? It's okay. Yeah.
So Lori and Carl, thank you for your leadership and the excitement you're creating for all of us and the learning that's happening. I'm sure you're thinking of contingency planning. It just occurred to me, let's say I'm hearing this weather concern, right? But somewhere there's going to be tremendous viewing. Is it possible to live stream, if we have bad weather, live stream Discovery Theater to the large screens around town as a way to not miss the thing and still have it as a group fun thing?
Yes, I think that we, living here, we absolutely have to, and thank you, Brent, for the kind words, too. That was very sweet. We've asked already, the city to be able to put it up on the big screen in Promenade Park for downtown. We will be streaming it as well at the Science Center. I think that others will be doing that. I mean, I think there are watch parties all throughout. I believe the University of Toledo is having one. Lourdes is working with Wildwood and hopefully having one there. There will be one at the Glass City Pavilion. And these are the ones that I'm hearing of, just larger scale downtown right now, let alone what will happen even if you are, I mentioned to my friend Jason about doing something on the library's roof. I'm like, that's a really nice viewing area. What are you doing up there? So there are some key locations, I believe. By Fifth Third Field will be activated as well. So there's going to be a wide range of events and things like that going on, but it's imperative to be able to stream it if you can't, if it's cloudy or snowing.
Yeah, NASA will have all sorts of live streams of it happening from all great locations, so you can always go to that as a resource.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Lori and Carl, for that very interesting presentation. In appreciation for you being here today, we'd like to present you with the book, Historical Tales of Toledo. It was authored by past President Clint Mock, and we will be making a donation in your name to the Polio Plus campaign. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. All right. Please join us next week, February 5th. We'll have a presentation by Rotarian Dr. Shonda Gore as she leads us in creating civil conversations. It's going to be a great program, so you don't want to miss it. There are 2 meetings this afternoon. The Peace Committee in Summit Room A and the Foundation Policy Review meeting in Summit B. So when I was president, I would close all of my meetings with a Rotary Minute, and I'd like to share this Rotary Minute that I presented at my first meeting on July 6, 2001. On a bitterly cold night in February 1905, a young lawyer named Paul Harris went to dinner with his new friend Sylvester Shealy. Sylvester was about his only friend in the big city of Chicago, and Paul was very lonely. He had grown up in a tiny village in Vermont where everybody knew one another by name, where one's word was one's bond, and where merchants and customers greeted each other by name. When he graduated from law school and arrived in Chicago, he was utterly shocked by what he found. In those days, there were no consumer protection laws. In fact, the only law was, let the buyer beware. Corruption was rife. Customers and employees suffered at the hands of unscrupulous businessmen. But most of all, Paul missed his fellowship that he experienced in his formative years. Paul proposed an idea to Sylvester. Why not gather together a group of business people? We could meet regularly for fellowship and could exchange ideas for mutual help. They would restrict membership to 1 representative from each line of business or profession, the rationale being that if many people from the same type of business were members, they would likely sit around and talk shop with one another, which was hardly conducive to the camaraderie that Paul envisioned. 4 people showed up for the first meeting: a coal merchant, a tailor, a mining engineer, and Paul Harris, the lawyer. At the next meeting, those 4 brought along a printer, an organ manufacturer, and a real estate broker. At each subsequent meeting, new members were introduced, and the venue rotated from one member's place of business to another, hence the choice of the name Rotary Club. Rotary soon expanded across America and then throughout the world. Within a very few years, Rotarians changed the focus of their organization from one of friendship and business exchange to one of service, becoming the world's first service club. Be careful out there, and we're adjourned.